Hey guys, it's Kevin again with a very delayed review for Scooby-Doo, The Backstage Rage. And what Scooby-Doo, The Backstage Rage is essentially about is basically we center on the mystery gang and they're going about their usual thing. There are these series of disappearances that keep occurring and basically they are trying to figure out what could have happened, but they know that it traces back to the Strand Theater, so basically it's up to them to solve, and they team up with these Hex Girls as well to solve this conspiracy and things like that. However, things start to get a lot more complicated as well, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, Scooby-Doo, The Backstage Rage, like I said in the movie preview, you guys don't know what this movie is, probably. This is a film that was directed by someone I know named Jordyn Farrell. He is a up-and-coming director. I've basically gotten to know him through him making this movie. You know, he watched a movie that one of my friends did, and he reached out to me, you know, about this movie and things like that, and I've always been very interested because, I mean, I love supporting people's original work. I love supporting a film that they're passionate about, and considering how passionate he was about this film, I told him that I would review it. I promised him that I would get out a review and things like that, and I watched this film quite a while ago, like about 2 weeks ago, and I just haven't really had the time to give my thoughts till now. I really want to wait till, you know, the dust settled, till more people have seen it, and I think more people have seen it now, so I finally have this review out. I was really interested in how this film would turn out, and it did not work for me. I'll be honest right now. I really did not like this film. In fact, I actually kind of hated Scooby-Doo, The Backstage Rage. There are definitely things that do work in this film, but ultimately it's a film that feels very amateur and very, just lazily put together. We'll just get into right now, though. So, I'll just get into the thing that I think really brings this entire film down, and that's the acting. The acting here, pretty much throughout this entire film, is pretty much unbearable, and it's mainly because Jordyn is working with mostly inexperienced actors, and it really does show. There is one actor who I think does do a really good job, and that is, I think his name is Garcia. He played the character of Shaggy, and I thought he did a good job for the most part. You know, he did his own thing, he held his own, and I overall was impressed by what he did here. I liked his performance in this film. I think that he, again, put his own spin on the Shaggy character, and from talking to Jordyn, he actually really did try to embody, different versions of Shaggy, and I think he did a really good job with that overall. I was impressed by his acting here. He has the most range out of the entire cast. He definitely seemed like he was the most into it, and I thought that he did a good job. But everyone else, I was not feeling here at all. Everyone else in this film feels either very bored, or they just seem very inexperienced. Like, they just weren't ready to take on this kind of role. You know, when I first watched this movie, Jordyn was actually there, so I got to talk to him about a lot of things I didn't like. And from what he told me, yeah, the cast in this film was very difficult to work with. They really weren't into it at all, and it sucks, because I think if he had a really talented cast, this really could have worked, but unfortunately, this cast just didn't really care about this movie, minus that one performance, as I said. Most of the cast here just didn't seem very committed, and it really does show here. So now let's get to the directing and the writing, which I will admit, Jordyn's directing in this film is not really the problem here. I admire the fact that he's trying to do something really different with this property. This is a Scooby-Doo film, but it's not the kind that you and I grew up with. He's going for something a lot darker here, a lot more out there, and I appreciate that. I like the fact that he's trying to do something different, and I think it does work for the most part. There is definitely a darker tone that looms throughout this, and I think he does a good job with that. I will say, whenever the film tries to be funny, it really didn't work for me. The comedy was not really making me laugh at all. I thought the comedy just really didn't work here. And maybe it will for some. Jordyn's told me before he has a very weird sense of humor, so maybe it'll appeal to some. But for me, I wasn't really feeling it here. But horror-wise, I do actually think he did a good job. There are some moments here that could legitimately be pretty creepy for some people, and I think for the most part it was well directed. And yeah, there was definitely a lot of passion here. This is coming from a true fan of Scooby-Doo, and you definitely do feel that throughout the film. The writing, though, that's really where we get to my main issue with the film besides the acting. Look, I understand that Jordyn really wanted to put something different together. but I just think he ultimately did too much here. This entire film, it feels like something where I get the passion, I really do. I get the passion that he had here, but the entire film feels far too ambitious. It feels like it's doing too much. I mean, especially the fact that it is as long as it is, it doesn't really justify its length in that way. This is a fairly simple story that really tries to overcomplicate things. What should be a typical mystery that they're solving just about these disappearances and things like that tries to be something far deeper involving Shaggy, and I do think that he did a good job with this arc with Shaggy. The problem is he focuses so much on Shaggy to the point where the rest of the characters pretty much have nothing to do. There's this girl that Shaggy likes that has a little bit more to do besides that, but other than her, almost every other character in this film feels very shortchanged in that way. And this is not something that Jordyn is shocked by. He even told me, like, he really didn't think he did a good job with writing these characters, and yeah, he definitely, that was the correct, that was the correct conclusion to come to, because it just isn't very good in terms of character. I think he could have done a much better job with that here for sure. Again, I appreciate the fact that he is trying to tell our story here. I appreciate the fact he's trying to do something different, but in doing so, he really only focused on Shaggy and no one else, and I think that really does hurt the film. It feels less like a Scooby-Doo film and more like a Shaggy one. In fact, Scooby-Doo himself doesn't even really play that much of a role here. He's just kind of here because he needs to be, and it doesn't really work. And so as a result, we have a story that just isn't very interesting. The whole mystery itself just didn't interest me. I didn't find myself very latched onto what was happening. It felt like just a generic Scooby-Doo mystery that was stretched out and just didn't really work in that sense. It also doesn't help that the film itself feels a bit tonally imbalanced in that way. There are parts in the film where, yes, it's trying to be like a horror film and things like that, and I do think it does a good job. And there are parts that are trying to honor the spirit of Scooby-Doo as well, which I also do appreciate, but it also tries to be a little bit more raunchier. There's a really bad recurring gag involving Fred and Shaggy's mom, and it did not work at all. I thought it was honestly pretty cringy, and I get what Jordyn was going for. I get that he thought he needed to give Fred something to do, but there's got to be more than that. Like, he could have given him something more, and it really didn't work at all. Daphne and Velma have almost nothing to do here either. It just isn't very well put together in terms of writing. I get what he was trying to go for, but overall, it just isn't a very well-written film. I think he really needed someone to oversee it. I think as a writer, he's definitely, again, Jordyn definitely has ambition, and I appreciate that. But I think with this film, he needed to focus on one thing, but also remember that this is a Scooby-Doo film. It's not just a Shaggy film, it's a Scooby-Doo film, and it feels too much like just a Shaggy film, and that kind of hurts it overall. The animation, I will say, is not bad here. I think for what he had, he did a good job with. But that being said, it also does have a negative effect to the point where, because the animation is so cheap, it's very hard to tell what's going on at points. It's very slow. There are many close-ups here that just isn't very well put together. And I think if this was more professionally made, I think overall I would have probably just been into this more, because it was really taking me out of it. There were many points where I was just kind of saying, like, what's actually happening here? What's actually going on in this scene? Who's talking? It was very hard to tell. I like the character designs. I like the background, but I don't like how slow it all is, and I don't like that these characters' mouths, like, barely move and things like that. It's a little hard to get into. I think it's not a bad animation style. It just needed more of a budget. And I told Jordyn this, like, when he made the movie. I really do think he should do this again. I really do. I think when he has more of a budget, and if, he is serious about going into the industry, let's just say he gets more of a budget, he gets talented actors, Maybe he gets someone to co-write the script with him. I think he should absolutely try this again, because I do think this film can genuinely work. I just think with the limited resources and the passion he had, I just don't think it came together as well as it could have. I will say the score is really good. I actually really like the score here, especially in the opening credits. I thought it was really great, and that's definitely the thing that I've watched back the most when it comes to this film, are actually the opening credits, because I do think they're actually really well put together, and I do think the score was really good here for the most part. But the editing, though, this film is far too long, and I get that Jordyn wanted to flesh out the story as much as possible, and he really wanted to take his time here, but it does not feel needed. It really feels like this is a film that could be like an hour and 30 minutes long, but it's for some reason 2.5 hours, and it really does drag, especially in the first like 40 minutes. Nothing really happens in that first 40 minutes. There are definitely things that go on, but it isn't really till I'd say an hour in, that's when we really start to get more into the story. For a while, it's a lot of setup, and it isn't very well paid off either. There's a lot of things that happen that just don't feel needed here. There are many scenes, like I said, the stuff with Fred and Shaggy's mom, that feel like deleted scenes. They don't feel like they need to be here. Scenes go on far too long. It just... It's way too long, and I think it really did need to be trimmed down for sure. Also, and this is something that a lot of people might not have a problem with, but there's this really weird thing he does with the editing where every single time there's a transition, he needs to spell it out for you. He needs to say, like, the next day, or it's, like, flashback in, like, big words, and I really did not like this at all. I honestly found it kind of patronizing, like, he didn't really think that we were able to tell if it was a flashback or not, when it honestly seemed pretty obvious to me, and I feel like it could be cut from the movie entirely. I don't really know why it's there. It felt like something that he thought would be cool, and it really wasn't at all. I just really did not think that it fit here. I get what he was trying to do, but it did not work at all. So again, ultimately, Scooby-Doo the Backstage Rage, it's not an unbearable film. Just as it is, I do think it's pretty bad. I don't think this is a film that I can recommend, unfortunately. Jordyn definitely does have talent, he has ambition, but as it is now, I think he needs to do this again when he has more of a budget, but I also do think that he needed to have a better understanding of what he really wanted this to be, because as it is, as a Scooby-Doo film, it doesn't really work. As a horror film, maybe it could have worked, but as a Scooby-Doo film, I just don't think it works all that well. It doesn't really feel like one. It definitely has the Scooby-Doo characters, but it doesn't have that spirit. It's lacking that style. It just overall doesn't work as a Scooby-Doo film. It has a mystery that just isn't very interesting. It's way too long for its own good. There's way too many characters. It at points does kind of feel like a clusterfuck, and just overall, I think there's a lot more that Jordyn could have done if he had a far more committed cast, if he had someone else to write it with, if he had a better animation style, and just in general more of a budget. I think this could be really good, but as it is now, it just didn't really do it for me. I do think there's an audience that is going to like it, but for me, I honestly found it kind of unwatchable at points. So overall, I am going to give Scooby-Doo the Backstage Rage overall a D+. Like I said, I really do hope that Jordyn continues to make movies. I really hope that this doesn't, like, deter him from wanting to do that or anything, because it absolutely shouldn't. Don't let my thoughts encroach upon your passion as a director. I see it. I see what you're trying to do. I see that you have talent. I think you need to realize your strengths and weaknesses. You need to realize what you're good at, and then what you're not as good at. I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to this film. I think it should be a learning experience, and from talking to Jordyn actually about this, it does seem like he's trying to do that. It does seem like he is trying to strengthen himself as a director and writer, which is great to see, and I definitely am going to keep up with him for sure in terms of his projects, because I am interested in seeing what he does end up coming up with. But either way, guys, in my review of Scooby-Doo the Backstage Rage, if you have seen this movie overall, let me know what you guys thought of it. Love to hear your thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and then we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.
Moving on.